G'day guys, this is Rob from Troutlore.com.au, Australia's fly tying specialist store. Today we're tying a simple little scud that's going to catch you fish on the still water all throughout this season. So let's get started. We are coming in with an Ahrex FW540 hook in the size 12. And then we're going to wrap on some UTC 70 Denier thread in black. You could use any colour you want for this, but the black gives a nice finish to the head. So that's what we're going to use in this instance. It's the only spot you're actually going to see the thread. So we're just going to wrap most of the way down the bend and then bring our thread back up to about 1/8 of an inch behind the hook eye. Trim off that little tag end. We don't want this fly to tank out like it would with a tungsten bead, but we do want a little bit of weight to it so it holds up against the current. So we're going to use some lead wire on this. What I've done is I've taken a small piece of the wire and flattened out the ends with the rear of my scissor blade, just so that it's easy to wrap in and it gives us a bit of a taper. So I'm just going to capture that at that point behind the eye, and then once we've got that in, we'll just fold it down to match the curve of the hook and then start wrapping our way down until we get to the bare hook shank, and then we'll wrap back up again. Not only is it given us a bit of weight in there, it's also created a bit more of a hump in the rear, which is going to create the more natural scud shape. Now for the rib, we're tying in some medium UNI Soft Wire. You could use any wire you like. I'm using copper in this instance. It doesn't have to be the copper colour. This is what I had on the desk at the time. We're just tying that in along the edge and bringing it down to that rear point where the taper finishes again, and then bringing our thread back up about halfway up the hook shank. For the back of this, being a scud, we're using scud back, obviously. This stuff from Upavon in the clear, which has a kind of semi-translucent. It's a little bit of a frosty colour, which is ideal for this. I'm just going to trim off a straight edge, and then most of the way up the hook shank here, we're going to tie that in, capture it. The reason for this is we want to allow the space down the hook shank to make sure that we can align this and have it even on either side. When you just tie it in at the very end, it tends to twist one way or another, and you end up with it not centered on the hook. This way we can work it down and make sure that at the bottom here, where we fold it over, it is now centered. Once that's in place, it's now time to add the dubbing for this. There's a number of products you could use for this. I mean, there's all sorts of dubbings. Obviously, things like Scud Dub makes sense. Hareline's Rainbow Scud Dub, they do a light and a dark shade. That's a really nice dubbing for this. What I've been enjoying using is our Mr. Peacock Dubbing. That's a similar sort of dark blend. It has blues, reds, greens, browns. That's the Peacock Brown colour. We also have the Peacock Red colour. Still has plenty of blues and yellows in it, but more of a red tinge. There's the Peacock Yellow as well, which has got blues and greens and browns, but a lot more yellow in it for those lighter scuds, depending on what the local invertebrates are like. This one's really good for in those sandy bottom lake sections where you get those lighter coloured Scud. But in this instance, we're using the Peacock brown colour. So we'll start off with just a little bit of that, and come in with some dubbing wax on the thread, and just the smallest amount. We don't need a lot. Build up a nice thin dubbing noodle. We're going to work back and forth 3 or 4 times over this body to build up the right taper, so you don't need to go all out and put too much in straight away. So we just come down, wrap that down to match the point where the wire is, and then start wrapping back up the body. A little extra wax on there, a little extra dubbing. Again, it's easy to add more than it is to take it away, so just keep building it up slowly. Bring that forward, make sure we cover everything, ending just shy of the hook eye, and then just preen those fibres down so we get an idea of the shape. Now we're going to repeat the process, but we're going to wrap back down the hook shank this time in the other direction. So build up another dubbing noodle, and then start wrapping down. We want to focus here in the center and just add more bulk to build up that sort of humpback shape. So we'll do a little bit more through the center before we finish off the taper. Making sure that noodle's staying fairly tight. Then we come down to the rear. We don't need to wrap too much into the back there, otherwise the taper won't hold its shape. And then we'll just start wrapping forward again. Probably one more application of dubbing. One last noodle. Now, a little bit of this stuff goes a long way. Just sticking there into the middle for a little extra bulk. Tightening that noodle off, and then coming forward. At this stage we'll just pop a half hitch in to lock that thread off. And now it's time to wrap the scud back forward. Before we do that, we just preen down those fibres like so. Grab our scud back and just angling the vise so we can see what we're doing to make sure that it's aligned on top. And a little bit of a stretch. And then pull tight with that thread. Now we pull that scud back and do a couple of wraps underneath to lock it off, and one more over the top. Then we can come in and trim that nice and close. A couple of extra wraps to hold that in place. And now it's time to run the ribbing over that. And this ribbing's going over the scud back so that it's going to create a slight humpy look and segmentation up the body. Just making sure that we're pulling down those errant fibres as we go, and making evenly spaced wraps as we work up the body like so. And once we get back up to the eye, we're going to run our thread behind the wire, in front of the wire, around the wire, and in front again, and that will lock it off and allow us to helicopter that wire to break it clean. There we go. Now with our whip finisher, we can come in and do a couple of 3 or 4 turn whip finishes just to seal that thread off. Trim that. Now we need to make sure that all these fibres that have been pulled up by the wrapping of the wire are forced downwards. If there's any that don't want to play ball, we can just give them a bit of a trim before we put the final element on, which is a nice coating of Upavon UV crystal coat resin. That's going to give us a nice glossy scud back, which will help capture light when it's in the water column. So we're just going to put a couple of drops on like so, and then with our bodkin, I'm just going to smooth that up and down the length of the scud back itself, making sure that it's going all the way around each side. Smoothing down any of those errant fibres. This stuff's a little bit thick going on, so you could use a thick resin like the Loon thick as well. What I do like about this is it goes on thick so it doesn't run everywhere, but it then smooths itself out quite nicely when it's left before you cure it. So we'll turn that upside down and let it all flow into a smooth edge before we take our torch and light it up. Does not take long with this Upavon resin. They claim it sets in 3 seconds. I prefer to do 3 or 4 seconds and then come in and do a second curing like so. That way ensures that we have a nice glossy hard coat. It's not going anywhere. To finish that off, we take our dubbing brush and give that a good scrubbing underneath. Really work those fibres out. That's the beauty of this dubbing. It's got nice long translucent fibres that happily pick themselves out like that, and then we can just trim that down to match up with the hook point, clean up the eye, and that is it. Of course, if you enjoyed this video, please hit the like button and give it a thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel so you can get notifications when new videos come out. We're trying to do at least one every week this year, so there's plenty of new fly patterns for you guys to tie. That's it for me. All the materials are available from the Troutlore fly tying store. You will find the materials list down there in the description. Tie yourself up a few, and as always, happy tying.